Hi guys, this is Janae and welcome back to my channel, and today I am finally going to be continuing my read along for Scum Villian Self-Saving System. We are about halfway through, I think. So I for some reason thought that we were closer to the end than we are. We're still quite close to the end in my opinion, but not so close that we're going to be finishing it up in this weekend. Probably next weekend we'll be finishing it. So yeah, I think what I might do, because there's been such a big gap between the read-alongs and everything like that, what I might do is try and finish it off on the Saturday, and then just take a break on the Sunday and then return with volume 1 of Modu on the next weekend. So we shall see. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. But yeah, I'm a little bit nervous because I feel like I haven't done this in forever, and I am sick, so that's not gonna help matters. I'm just gonna see how it goes, and after the first hour, we'll assess and see if I can keep going for another hour. But if I do go for the 2 hours like I want to, then we are gonna take a 10-minute break like always. So anyway, I'm happy to be back doing this. I've missed it, and like just the story has been bugging me. I really want to get back to it. So in case you can't remember or anything like that, we ended off on um, Shen Qingque waking up inside Luo Binghe's dream. So I'm really keen to see where this goes. I vaguely remember this from the Donghua, I think, but I can't remember what the result ended up being. So for anyone who wants to read along in their own books, we are going from page 152. So I'm gonna give just maybe a minute or two more, and then we will get started. Just if anyone else wants to show up before we do get started. I just quickly want to take a sip. I'm really stressed about doing this while I'm sick, because my parents' voices have been coming and going because they're very sick and I got it from them. So we shall see um, how that turns out. Anyway. Okay. Sorry, this is gonna be an entire thing again because I feel like I need to get used to um doing this again. So if I bump something, sorry about that. Okay, let's get going. As soon as Shen Qingque laid eyes on him, he recognized his place and what scenario he'd been thrust into. Instantly, all of Shen Qingque's hopes turned to dust, and and even as a shower of tears rained down on his heart, he patted Luo Binghe's shoulder. I heard you. No need to call me so many times. Yes, Shizun, Luo Binghe said hurriedly. Why are you here too? Do you know where we are? Being lazy, Shen Qingque directly echoed the system's lines. This is the world within a dream realm. Then why am I here? Luo Binghe asked again. Anyone else being here is the strange thing, while your presence is quite natural, said Chen Jingque. This is your dream realm. Mine? Luo Binghe startled and backed up a step, looking at the endless, desolate land and sky. My dream realm actually looks like this? The dream realm, one's view of the world, reflected one's heart. Luo Binghe was so young, yet his mindscape wasn't filled with the red of flowers and the green of willows, but this bleak scenery. One couldn't help but feeling sorrow. Shen Qingque pretended to ponder for a while, This is not an ordinary dream realm. I'm afraid that while you were unaware, someone tampered with it. The waves of spiritual energy within the dreams are strong and unstable, though this master was inadvertently pulled in by you. This disciple is useless and involved Shizun once again. Lobingho's face was ashamed, but he considered this carefully. Exactly who would tamper with my dream realm? Chia was ready with an answer, fully enjoying the experience of divulging spoilers. I love that. No need to think too hard. The borders of this dream realm churn with demonic chi, and an entity who would use such crude techniques undoubtedly must be a demon. Lo Binghe was unsurprised, and these words only deepened his hatred towards that race. The ways of demons are truly poisonous. Shen Jingqie wondered what sort of experience loving her would make in the expression loving her would make in the future, thinking back on those words, once he learned of his own demonic heritage. Not necessarily poisonous, said Shen Jingqie with a smile. Perhaps their intentions are the exact opposite. Someone not in the know couldn't hope to comprehend the words spoken from his omniscient perspective. Sorry, I don't know why I found that so funny. Um, Lo Binghe didn't understand. What did his master mean? The changing cheer's smile seemed profound, and the tail of his sentence was inflected lightly upward in a somewhat teasing tone. It was the sort of hint that made people's imaginations run wild. Lo Binghe stopped there, not daring to think about it further. In truth, Shen Jingqie didn't intend to tease. He thought himself very straightforward. The one who tampered with Lo Binghe's dream realm was Xiao Hualing. Though she did have some harmful intentions, her underlying motives was obvious. Naturally, she was driven by a young girl's secret yearning for love. I mean, we'll see how that goes. Otherwise, she would have directed her aggressions towards others, not specifically Lo Binghe. Demons were compelled to viciously bully the person they liked. Only if the object of their affection failed to die would the demon accept them. If their target died, that meant they were useless and not worth nursing any lingering affection for. Oh, that puts a very interesting perspective on how Shen Qingque and Lo Binghe's relationship turns out by the end of this. This dream realm was rather complicated. Sorry, is rather complicated, said Shen Jingque. An ordinary nightmare technique couldn't trap me. I can dispel those with a mere thought. But this dream realm was truly meticulously constructed. I'm afraid that until the core of the illusion is destroyed, no one will be able to leave. Even Shizun will be trapped in this dream realm forever? The Binger asked anxious. Shen Xingxue glanced at him. You will be too. The Binger's mind jolted, his face going from red to white. It's all this disciple's fault. The situation is what it is, so there's no use decrying it, said Shen Jingque. We should devise a solution as soon as possible, dispel the barrier and take our leave. Always so efficient. Lo Binghe silently nodded and followed behind Shen Jingque as they headed towards the dream realm's border. Shen Jingque's face was smooth and unchanging, but his mind was a stormy sea. He was having an intense back and forth with the system. System alerts. You are now entering an important subplot scenario, the Dream Demon Meng Mo's Barrier. During this subplot, please make sure to assist Lo Binghe in defeating Meng Mo's illusion. Otherwise, 1,000 satisfaction points will be deducted. There it was again. Always deducting satisfaction points, and every time it was a heart attack inducing number. After studiously working for so long, Shen Qingque had only managed to scrooge up a couple of satisfaction points here and there, while the system could remove 1,000 points in a single deduction. Was this really fair? As a person, no. As a system, you shouldn't be so inflexible. That wasn't the main point, though. The main point was that this was the wrong script. Let us summarize the scenario's original setup. Lobinghe was pushed into Mingmo's sphere of influence, but before danger struck, he instinctually sought protection and pulled the person he trusted most into the barrier with him. Shen Qingque urgently called the system. Master, good master, esteemed master, there has been a bug, right? In this scenario section, Lobinghe should be cozying up with a maiden, and the maiden is responsible for unraveling his complexes and using love to help him defeat his inner demons. How come I've been thrust into this role? Where is the promised deep and emotional heart to heart where she's accepted into his harem? Where is the promised little Shimei who refuses to leave him either in life or in death? Our self-inspection failed to find a bug. The system is running normally. No bug? That meant that in this scenario, Shen Qingque either had to carry out the role or die. This was the butterfly effect. Originally, the one who was pulled into Lobinghe's nightmare was Ning Ying. As Lobinghe's closest, most trusted confidant on a Qingjing peak in the early story, this gate-crashing, intimacy-building task was clearly her job. What was happening now? How had the hat of closest, most trusted confidant nonsensically landed on Shen Qingque's head? I don't know. I wonder. I would like to express that I am overwhelmed by this honor, but I don't at all want to accept the special distinction. Shizun, what's wrong? Lobinghe asked in concern, seeing his unreadable expression. Shen Qingque promptly pulled himself together. Nothing's wrong, he said calmly. The master was thinking that demons who manipulate dream realms often target the weaknesses of the human heart. You must be vigilant and on your guard. I feel like that's a good approach, though, being like, oh no, this is just something you need to keep in mind. Not plot relevant at all. Lobinghe nodded, his expression firm. This disciple definitely won't allow Shifu to be dragged in again. This was miserable. Not only had Shen Qingque been thrust into a dangerous situation, on top of that, he had to assume the task of playing out the maiden's role. Shen Qingque absolutely didn't want to change. Oh, sorry. Hold on. Shen Qingque absolutely didn't want to charge through a mountain of knives or a sea of fire with the male lead to confront the terrifying master Meng Mo, while also blocking knives for him and even providing free psychological therapy. That said, complaining was useless. In the past, when he'd been faced with this kind of situation, his habit had been to cuss out airplane shooting towards the sky. But honestly, Great Master Airplane was also innocent. He was a proper upright stallion novel author, and he definitely wouldn't have wanted something like this to happen in his work. Oh my word. A healthy maiden being replaced by a scum villain? How disheartening. Ordinary readers would throw the book to the floor. The two of them kept walking, the clouds above and scenery around them like a kaleidoscope, sometimes lengthening and twisting, and at other times shattering into thousands of fragments, always erratic. The picture formed by the world they walked through was exceedingly eerie, like the people had been illustrated by Da Vinci, while the backgrounds had been illustrated by Picasso. Oh, that's an interesting description. The style clashed. The style clash was extraordinarily intense. Suddenly, from within the dense layers of cloud emerged the building of a city. They stopped in their steps. He looked at Shinjinchu, waiting for a signal. Counter soldiers with armies and floods with earthen dams, Shinjinchu muttered to himself. We deal with whatever situations arise as appropriate. Forward. As they walked to the city gates, He raised his head, his expression becoming slightly puzzled. Shen Qingqun knew very well what he was thinking. The city looked very familiar. Of course it was familiar. This was the city He had wandered while homeless during his childhood. The city gates naturally had no guards defending them and slowly opened by themselves. Shen Qingqun led him inside. This dream realm was frightening in its realism. When abstract, it was so abstract that it became blobs of color. When photorealistic, it was so photorealistic as to be indistinguishable from reality. The city streets, markets, residences, vendor stalls, every single one was intricate enough to make your hair stand on end. Lit brightly with lamps, with people coming and going. From a distance it looked bustling and lively. But once Shentuture drew close, even though he had long prepared himself, his heart still almost escaped from his rib cage. These people, moving about, were Tue-Wan, faceless. Every visage was a blurry mass, features unclear, and none of them made a sound. They didn't seem like living people at all, yet they still mulled around, wandering back and forth. The entire city was deathly silent, its busyness entirely uncanny. He had never seen a scene like this. Shizun, he said aghast, what are these things? Shen Qingque was panicking a little from terror, but he still took on the duty of being an expository encyclopedia. This is an illusionary city created via a nightmare. In the dream realm, one can create inanimate objects such as buildings and trees, but not living people. At most, they can be fashioned to this extent, speechless monsters that lack noses and faces. Even so, to be able to construct something on the scope of a city and to make it nearly like onto reality, I'm afraid it can only be one person. He was incredibly cooperative, and he humbly sought instruction. One person? Meng Mo. Meng Mo, the dream demon, was the boss of this instance of a dream realm. Meng Mo's true identity was that of a famous, brilliant, and accomplished elder among demons. Several hundred years ago, a bout of divine punishment had destroyed his physical body, but his powerful spirit had endured undamaged. From then on, he had become a parasite within others' dream realms, subsisting by absorbing their spiritual energy and vitality. At the same time, he was also one of the protagonist's teachers on his road to becoming a demon. Thus, we can only give him a more direct and intimate nickname, the portable grandfather. Okay, I did not see that coming. Oh my word. Meng Mo was the one who, after Libinger broke through the barrier, formulaically took a liking to the protagonist, formulaically taught him everything about his lost arts, and formulaically, from that point forth, occasionally helped the male lead think up plans for taking care of small fries. Loving her, still wanted to ask a few more questions, but then his eyes involuntarily swept through the crowd and froze for a split second. Despite knowing the answer, Shen Qingque asked, "What's wrong?" Faces, Robinho blurted out. Shizun, just now, I think I saw people with faces. Shen Qingque readily heeded his words and kept it concise. We follow. They closely tailed the few figures who were incongruous with the people and style of the surroundings, turning and twisting through the city until they finally stopped before an alley. In total, there were 5 people with faces. They appeared to be 5 youths, each one equipped with noses and features. The 4 taller figures surrounded one on the ground, and they cursed and yelled incessantly. Words like little mongrel and bastard poured forth from their mouths. They completely failed to notice the 2 people behind them. It looked like they can't see us, said Lo Bing-he. He looked at Chen Qingque as if to ask, didn't you say Meng Mo was incapable of creating people with complete features? Time for more angst. Chen Qingque heaved a sigh in his heart. Meng Mo indeed cannot create people using nightmares, but he didn't create these individuals. Lo Bing-he, look more closely at their faces. Lo Bing-he slowly turned his gaze towards them, although his expression didn't change much. In a flash, a drop of cold sweat dripped down his forehead. These are not illusions created by Meng Mo, said Chen Qingque. They are projections of real people from your memories. Meng Mo only awakened these reflections from the memories sleeping within your mind. But Lo Bing-he could no longer hear him. He placed his hands on his temple, and it seemed as if his head was twitching. Okay, let me just quickly switch my phone to silent, because usually my phone's on silent. And I don't like it interrupting. Okay. Shen Qingque knew that Lo Bing-he's inner demon had already struck. Those 4 rowdy youths surrounded the child in the alley, who appeared to be only around 4 or 5 years old, as they punched and kicked him. That shabbily dressed child had covered his head with both arms and curled up on the ground, soundlessly taking the beating. It really made one worry that they would beat the young one to death. Huh, little mongrel sure is blind, daring to enter our territory and snatch our food. Must be tired of living. Step on him, step on him. He's so pitiful, right? Hungry with nothing to eat, right? Beat him to death and he won't have to worry about that. Lo Bing-he's head hurt, like it was splitting open. That small, frail figure on the ground was his younger self, from the past, though the dishevelled hair and blood-stained face, 2 bright eyes like stars, like sharp swords, lanced forward, meeting his gaze. Lo Bing-he was completely unable to look away. Pull yourself together, Chen Qingque said lowly. It's only an illusion. However, the terrifying thing about Meng Mo was that he specialized in summoning the human heart's deepest terrors, rage and misery, in order to destroy a person's psychological defenses. To Lo Bing-he, who had already activated his God mode cheats, the power of 10,000 Meng Mo's together would amount to little more than parlor tricks. But the Lo Bing-he now, whose demonic blood had yet to awaken, was trapped in the dream realm, in his dark memories. All he could see was his own powerlessness. Suddenly, the alley seemed distorted, transforming into another one. Not good, Chen Qingque thought. A second killing blow, without time to prepare. They were in a broken-down little hut. The hut only had 1 bed, a crooked little table with a dimly lit oil lamp on top, and a small wooden bench. On the bed lay a haggard old woman. With great effort, she tried to prop herself up, but from beginning to end, she was unable to do so. A small figure rushed in from outside, the tender-faced loving her, only a little over 10 years old, supported the woman. Around his neck hung that jade pendant. "Mother, why are you getting up again?" he asked anxiously. "Didn't you say it's fine to rest?" The woman coughed. "Lying down doesn't help with anything. Might as well get up and wash the clothes." "Already finished washing," said little loving her. "Mother, lie down and wait for me to finish simmering your medicine. You can work after you take it and get better." The woman's face was ashen, her sickness long beyond cure, and she had little time left to live. She smiled while patting Lo Binghe's head. "Binghe is so sweet." Little Lo Binghe lifted his face, forcing himself to smile. "What does mother want to eat?" "These days I have less and less appetite." The woman paused, and hesitatingly added, "The last time our house's young master threw out his white congee, I did wish for a bit of a taste. I wonder if the kitchens have any left." Little Living Her vigorously nodded. "I will go ask for mother." "Just asking is enough." The woman warned him again and again. "If there is nothing left, then just make something light and soupy." Oh no, this is going to be a mess, isn't it? "As long as it fills the stomach, it's fine. Absolutely do not request any from the chef." Lobingho promised profusely, then ran out like the wind, his feet clapping against the ground. After lying down for a while, the woman felt beneath her pillow for a needle and thread and started doing needlework. The lamplight in the hut became dimmer and dimmer. While Lobingho's mind was unclear, he reached out, trying to grasp something. Shinchinchir grabbed his hand. "Lobingho," he said forcefully, "look carefully. This isn't your mother, and you are no longer that helpless child who could only endure humiliation." One of the things that made this nightmare so lethal was that the more agitated the trapped victim became, the more damage it would do to their mind. Lobinga's present extreme instability was terribly harmful to his spirit. Another dangerous thing that you needed to remember was that you absolutely could not attack the people who appeared in your dream realm. I think maybe I'm making this up, or maybe I'm remembering it from the Donghua, but maybe it's something like if you attack them, you're basically attacking yourself. Every single person was formed from the mind and consciousness of the dream realm's host. As soon as you attack them, you would also be attacking your own brain. Okay, yeah. Many people, not knowing this, or unable to control their emotions, attack the people in the dream realm who'd hurt them in the past, and thereby send themselves into a coma. If Lubinga fell into that state, Shenqingque would of course also be trapped in his dream with him. The scenery around them shifted erratically. The nightmare was a collection of Lubinga's misfortunes and traumas from his short decade-plus years of life. The scene suddenly transformed into little Lubinga's pleading with the house chef to grant his adopted mother a bowl of congee before being ridiculed by the manor's young master. Then it became the time right after he joined Chingjing Peak, when he'd been not subjugated, subjected to exclusion and spite by his numerous Shishongs. His frail form straining as he swung a rusty axe or carried pails of water up the long stairs as his steps slowed more and more. Then the moment when his treasure jade pendant was snatched away, never to be found. The disordered scenes piled up as they came one after another without pause. The present living her could neither see nor hear anything beyond this maelstrom of images and memories. Within his head there was only an ongoing explosion of hatred, despair, suffering, helplessness, and fury from those times, churning endlessly within his chest and mind. The only way to dispel this nightmare would be to undo the tangles in one's heart, thereby causing the nightmares to collapse on themselves. But loving his fists were tightly clenched, cracking sounds coming from his fingers. His breathing grew increasingly unsteady, his eyes turned an unnatural red, and a faint, discernible current of spiritual power coursed around him, as if his desire to attack were growing near irresistible. Oh no. Standing near him was supremely dangerous, thought Shen Qingque. Don't attack them, Shen Qingque said harshly. Even if you hit them, you'll be the one who's injured. Lo Binghe could no longer hear his words. He lifted his right arm, and a powerful spiritual blast flew forth from his palm, hurtling straight forward to destroy the people laughing freely within their illusion. Oh, great! Shen Qingque cried out within his heart. No matter how painful, his body still understood its duties. He rushed over, throwing himself before the illusions, blocking the spiritual blast head on. It struck his lower abdomen. In that instant, Shen Qingque felt like he'd been stomped on by an elephant, his vision going dark. If this weren't the dream realm, he'd have vomited an endless fountain of blood. As expected of the protagonist, Shen Qingque's face was drenched with tears. Lo Binghe was obviously only a young disciple, so how could he release such a powerful spiritual blast? It seemed that ever since he'd unlocked the OOC function, not only had he not accomplished any grand achievements, the only thing he'd done aside from blocking blows was block more blows, and also block some blows. Okay. He was doing just grand as a self-sacrificial meat shield, wasn't he? I mean, okay, if you say so. With the attack of living hers, the illusion around them was broken, and the people and objects all shattered like glass into thousands of shards. The the illusionary landscape transformed into a remote, forested wilderness. The sky was a dark blue, and the lone, cold moon hung high and gold above their heads. Lo Binghe's mind instantly cleared. He first stared blankly, speechless at the half-kneeling Shen Qingque, who was unable to stand. Then he lowered his head to look at his own palm, where a shred of remaining spiritual power was still flowing through his fingertips. Vaguely remembering what he'd just done, his face turned stark white. Lo Binghe threw himself to Shen Qingque's side to support him, both worried and regretful. Shizun, why didn't you hit back? With Shen Qingque's level of spiritual power, he would have been fully capable of returning Lo Binghe's spiritual blast, forcing their powers to collide and directly pitting them against each other until the stronger one won out. Not only could he have dissolved Lo Binghe's attack, he could have deflected it back at him. Foolish child, Shen Qingque said simply, expressing his innermost feelings. Then he continued weakly. The point was to ensure you wouldn't be injured. If I deflected it back and injured you, what would be the purpose of that? The frail voice made Lo Binghe want to strike his own heart and kill himself. Wow, that's extreme. But now the one injured is Shizun. It hadn't been long since they fought those 3 matches against the demon realm, and Shizun had already, again, been injured for his sake, and this time by his own hand. Shen Qingque saw the self-blame and misery on the child's face about to overflow, and unable to stand it, he said consolingly, Can your cultivation compare to mine? Even if this master took several more blows, it wouldn't matter. But you were poisoned though, so it's not like you're at your normal peak performance. Loving her would have preferred Shen Qingque be as he had in the past, and vent his anger by viciously beating him and cursing him. Even if he were utterly ignored, scorned and ridiculed, it would have been easier on his heart. On the contrary, Shen Qingque's tone and words were unerringly gentle, and so loving her was struck dumb and speechless, completely at a loss for what to do. After a long moment, he said in a low voice, "It's all my fault." The early loving her indeed walked the path of a brainless white lotus. Chen Qingque figured he'd once again fallen into the self-flagellating pattern of an anxious people-pleaser. I mean, that's quite an accurate character description. It has nothing to do with you, Chen Qingque explained patiently. The way of demons are extremely unpredictable and impossible to guard against. However, if you don't want to run into similar troubles in the future, you must become stronger. These words were spoken purely out of his personal feelings. This was a world of immortals and monsters, where the where the strong ate the weak. Becoming stronger was the only way to guarantee that you wouldn't become cannon fodder to be pushed around by the world. Lobingha's thoughts shifted, and without speaking, suddenly raised his head, fixing his steady gaze on Shen Qingque. Shen Qingque's heart thumped. Lobingha's eyes, dark like obsidian, flashed with a light more dazzling than the reflection of the moon and stars. That that look in his eyes, that kind of protagonist's look, full of resolute conviction and blazing fighting spirit. Could it be? I've already become the protagonist's guiding star on his life path going forward? Oh my goodness. Lubinga fell into a proper kneeling position by Shinchichu's side. "I understand," he said in a strong, clear voice. "Wait, what did you understand this time? Can you not say only half of your words every time? Tell me the rest." Shen Qingque didn't notice that, as Lubinghe spoke this sentence, he didn't use this disciple to address himself. That's true, I also didn't notice it. Lubinghe tightly clenched his fists. "This kind of thing," he said, enunciating every word. "I definitely won't let it happen a second time. Letting Shizun protect his weak self, letting Shizun be injured because of him. This kind of thing absolutely could not happen again." Shen Qingque let out an "Oh, what's going on?" He suddenly had this "the protagonist is protecting me, I feel so safe" kind of feeling. What exactly was going on? Safe? Your ass. This person will carve you into a human stick in the future. Wake up. Shen Qingque was filled with a plethora of complex emotions. Hell. Originally, the conviction to become stronger to protect my important person should have been inspired by the protagonist seeing the female lead's frail, lovely, and delicately painted form after she sustained an injury while helping him. Was the system laying all the emotional labor associated with the female lead's role on Shen Qingque? To hand out the wrong script at this point? Also, if you're gonna give me extra parts, could you at least offer me a complimentary meals? on a Taking on a main character's long and tedious lines while being paid an extra's thin and meager wages. I feel this. This was labor exploitation. Out of selfishness, Shen Qingque managed to lift a hand and pat Loving her on the head. Loving her's originally stubborn gaze froze, as if a handful of clear spring water had doused its flickering anger. Changing Chua thought for a moment. Actually, you need not worry too much. If you cannot become strong, I will stay by your side and protect you. Instead of letting Lobing become the pitch-black basket case of a young man who made destroying the world his personal mission, it'd be better if he could stay this delicate little white lotus forever. Shen absolutely wouldn't have minded keeping this iteration of Lobing by his side and taking care of him for a lifetime. That's actually quite sweet. These were his simple thoughts, but to the person hearing his words, they didn't sound so simple. Loving her was wholly dumbfounded. No one had ever said such a straightforward and impassioned promise to him. Even though the world was large, few people in it could say, "You need not become strong. I am here. And of course, I won't let you be bullied." And they weren't empty words. If Shizun said he could do it, he could. He had already proven time and again with his actions that he would rather sustain grievous injury than let Lobinho suffer even a tiny bit of harm. Still, the sense of indulgence within these words was too much to bear. As that first surge of warmth slowly subsided, a burning heat crawled up Lobinho's face. Are we feeling a little bit self-conscious here? Shen Qingque coughed for a while, miserably discovering that coughing up blood within the dream realm was impossible, then pinching Lobinger's arm. "All right, first help me up." Lobinger realized that where his wrist had been pinched, neither hurt nor itched. Instead, it tingled. Immediately, he also realized his thoughts were overstepping and scolded himself a little. Thinking such nonsense at a time like this. How disrespectful to Shizun. He hurriedly organized his thoughts and did as he was told. Suddenly, a voice sounded out of nowhere. That hoarse, aged voice made an inquisitive noise and said, "You're quite something to actually break through this elder's barrier, boy." The voice echoed all around them. It was impossible to determine which direction it was coming from. This level's boss had finally appeared. Lobingho was supporting Shen Qingque and didn't raise to his feet, his gaze weary. Meng Mo had appeared while Shen Qingque was injured, and things were not looking good. Lobingho resolved to himself that if Meng Mo tried to attack, even with his paltry strength, he would still give his all to impede him and earn Shen Qingque every possible chance of survival. I mean, as long as you're the one taking the fall, then both of you will get out of it alive. But if he has to take the fall, then he will suffer the consequences. Livinga looked at Chinchingche. The latter's entire mind was filled with the thoughts of, "I've finished my friendship performance. I can finally leave work now." And he was extremely cheerful. He even felt like teasing a student. "The senior is asking for this young Euro," he said. "Why didn't you reply?" Lubinga's face reddened. He turned and spoke in a clear voice. "You flatter me. The barrier was broken by my master's strength alone." "I mean, that's a lie." The voice humphed as if in disdain. Shen Qingqian knew why he'd humphed. Though he had blocked an attack for Lubinghe, this was Lubinghe's dream realm, and so Lubinghe had needed to wrest back control of his consciousness before the nightmare could be broken. But Shen Qingque couldn't be bothered to explain. The voice spoke. "This elder wants you to come over, boy. But I don't want this ordinary cultivator from Tangchong Mountain to hear our conversation. I'll have him sleep first." As expected, the circumstances were exactly the same as when Ning Ying had played this role in the original story. Everyone aside from Living Her would be waved off stage by Meng Moa. This is interesting because I I feel like I remember it not going according to Mengmo's plan though, but we shall see. A headache instantly came over Shen Jingque, and he collapsed heavily. Alarmed, Lobinghe gathered him in his arms. Shizun, he called. Shizun! No need to worry, said Mengmo. This elder only sent him into a dream within a dream. He's just in a deep sleep. Get over here, you. This time, it was possible to discern that the voice was coming from the pitch-black cave off to the west. Lobinghe couldn't wake Shen Jingque. He carefully laid his master on the ground, then turned and spoke in the direction of the voice. My master acknowledged you as a senior, so I must treat you with the same courtesy. I hope you also won't cause Shizun trouble. Memur chuckled. I saw your memories, boy. This master of yours does not treat you well. Why not just let me get rid of him? I would be doing you a favor. The memories Memur had looked at were mostly those of the interactions between the original Shen Jingque and Liu Binghe. Those memories were indeed the greatest in number, but Liu Binghe shook his head. Shizun isn't like you say, senior. In addition, no matter what, Shizun is my honored master. He can treat me however he likes, but as his disciple, I cannot disrespect him. Mengmu humphed. How backward. The human realm's righteous path is full of this type of hypocritical morality. So what if he's honored or not, the master or whatever? If someone mistreats or harms me, they should be killed. He knew your cultivation was not sufficient to face Skyhammer, yet he still let you out for that match. Were his intentions not clear? At that time, even though I didn't believe I would win, said Lobinghe. Sorry, even I didn't believe I would win, said Lobinghe. But Shizun believed in me. Not only did he give me an opportunity, he even encouraged me during the match. And in the end, I truly did win. The next sentence he said silently and only to himself. For my sake, Shizun blocked 2 attacks meant for me. His goodwill is genuine. Mengmo had only randomly skimmed some memory fragments. He didn't understand Shen Jingque's behavior, nor did he want to try unraveling the issue, though he was quite pleased with Lobinghe's attitude. You, boy, are a person who values loyalty and bonds. Not even a thousandth of how Shizun does towards me, said Lobinghe. If Memur had a mouth, its corners would have been twitching. He opted to change the topic. After murmuring for a moment, he said, This elder senses that within your body something is being suppressed. Even though I cannot tell exactly what it is, it must be something surpassingly remarkable. Lobinghe was a little shocked. What sort of thing is that? What sort of thing is it that even you can't tell? Mingmua chuckled. My race produces master cultivators in droves. It is not impossible that a demon more illustrious than this elder sealed something within your body. In any case, Mengmu surely wasn't so eager to throw away his several hundred-year-old reputation that he'd waste time tricking an impoverished teenager who had nothing. Nevertheless, Lobinghe stared in disbelief. Does senior mean that the thing in my body is related to demons? What? Are you displeased? Mengmu asked sneeringly, eager to sever any connection with the demon realm. Lobinghe's state of shock didn't last for too long. His thoughts whirled rapidly before he declared, The demon realm does many evil things of all kinds, and has injured my master multiple times. Naturally, I cannot associate with them. Mengmo became depressed. Can you go 3 sentences without mentioning that master of yours, boy? Let the elder guess. The next thing you want to ask is, may I ask the senior if there is a method to remove the something from my body? Lobing smiled wearily. Even if I ask, would the senior tell me? Mengwu laughed boisterously. It's not that I don't want to tell you, but that it is truly beyond me. I can't even see it clearly. How can I tell you how to remove it? If not for the fact that I couldn't make sense of you, boy, I would have already killed you both. Why else would I care to drag this out for so long? You think I've that much time on my hands? I mean, he didn't ask you to drag him into this situation. Her didn't speak. He was thinking. You don't even have a body anymore. You're just a shade being a parasite on others' dream realms. If Meng Mo didn't have time, who did? That's also fair. Meng Mo, unaware that Her was intentionally ridiculing him, continued, removing it would be impossible for me, but suppressing it is not out of the question. Senior is willing to tell me how? Her asked tentatively. Not only can this elder teach you how to suppress it, he can teach you so much more, said Ming Mo leadingly. This implication was extremely blatant, and Her understood. His heart sank. You want me to cultivate the demonic path? As his tone turned cold, Ming Mo's temper fled. What's wrong with cultivating the demonic path? If you cultivate the demonic path, the thing in your body will bring great benefits to your cultivation. You could leap 1,000 kilometers in a day. You could stand above thousands. These are not empty words. Within time, your power could overturn and sweep away the entirety of 3 realms, and the heavens and earths within. And it would also be simple. At that last part, Her's heart jolted. 1,000 kilometers in a day, stand above the thousands. The entirety of the 3 realms swept away before him. That was to say, he'd become strong, the strongest? He quickly rejected the thought. Shenjin Chua hated the way of demons more than anything. If he couldn't resist this Meng Mo's temptation to become a demonic cultivator, how could he face his master? Whether Shenjin Chua would be thunderously angry or not, or drown in depression, either way, Her definitely didn't want to find out. No, he said, resolutely refusing. Meng Mo sneered. If you refuse to learn from me, you won't be able to suppress the demonic energy in your body. It's hidden deeply now, and you're fine because it can't be seen. But this elder senses that the seal in your body is weakening. One day in the future, when that power breaks through, how will that good Shifu of yours treat you? He who abhors evil and makes eliminating demons and upholding justice his mission. Even as Mengua articulated Lobingher's greatest worry, Lobingher clenched his teeth. This junior is but an ordinary cultivator, for whom achieving even foundational establishment is full of perils and hardships. Why do you insist I cultivate the demonic path? The question was way too high level. Other than the author, who could explain why all the great geniuses and masters were always crying and pleading for the protagonist to be their apprentice, disciple, son-in-law. No, in fact, even most authors probably didn't know the answer to this eternal riddle. You should appreciate others' kindness, boy. This elder can see that you are extraordinary. Would you rather all my knowledge vanish like smoke along with my physical body? How many people would beg for this to no avail? Lobingher showed no feeling on his face. At his refusal to reply, Mengmo felt a rush of ominous premonition. Sure enough, the next time Lobingher opened his mouth, he did so with a pure and harmless smile. Surely Senior isn't so eager to teach me because he's unwilling to let his knowledge vanish without a successor, right? He asked, slowly and composed. Mingmu cried to himself, not good. If only if one lives by feeding off of others' dream realms, and one often changes hosts, one's spirit will weaken and suffer damage during the transfers, said Lobingho. But if one were to live long term within a set host's body, one could instead preserve the nutrition, preserve and nurture the spirit to stabilize it. He paused. Senior Mingmo, could it be that you're already approaching your limit, and that's why you have to pick me to be the host you'll raise? Having been seen through, Mingmo neither denied it nor became angry. Instead, he grandly admitted, "That's right. Who'd have thought, boy, that you were actually so well learned and knowledgeable that you'd even know something like that?" Lobingho's expression was unperturbed. Okay, so my throat is burning like mad. I don't think I will be able to get through another hour of this without like fully losing my voice. I'll try again tomorrow for another hour. But for now, I think we did okay. I think like 2 pages past. Yeah, so I think we did about 22 pages in the hour, so I think that's pretty good. But unfortunately, I think I'm gonna have to stop it here because otherwise I can't, like, I can feel my voice becoming worse and worse. So, anyway, I hope you guys still enjoyed it. Thank you so much for joining me, and otherwise, I'll see you in tomorrow's live. Bye.